Talladega, the third to final race of the season. Mexico City will be hosting a NASCAR race, and the Clash goes to Winston-Salem, North Carolina for Bowman Gray Stadium. Let's break down the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. Hope you're all having a great Thursday afternoon. NASCAR has just dropped all of its schedules for 2025 for the top three national series. Let's go ahead and break it down. We have some big changes in the playoffs. We have some important new tracks added to the schedule for 2025 in the Cup side and the Xfinity and Truck side. We'll talk more about the Cup. I'll break down, show the Xfinity and Truck Series schedule later in the show. But let's go ahead and get into it because it's exciting. We have a couple of new racetracks I want to talk about, and then of course the playoffs have been shaken up a little bit as well with some new tracks being added, a few taken out. Let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start out by, looking at the regular season. Here's the entire regular season schedule here. Obviously, Daytona kicks it off. But what's a big thing, we'll take a look at a few key moments here, is obviously the Clash at Bowman Gray. That's new. Mexico City is brand new. On June 15th. That should be exciting. The Xfinity Series will also be there. And then, of course, we'll look at the playoffs as well. You can see the playoff schedule here. A few tracks being added in and out. New Hampshire, Gateway on that schedule. And then you have Talladega in the round of 8. So let's go ahead and break down everything. Let's start out with the Clash at Bowman Gray, right? Because this is interesting. February 2nd, this is the week before the Super Bowl. Coming back to Winston-Salem, right, in North Carolina. NASCAR has raced a points-paying Cup race at this racetrack before, many decades ago. They will return for the Clash. And I like this decision. I actually liked the racing, the on-track product at the LA Memorial Coliseum the last 3 years. And I've been one that has not been a big fan of the LA atmosphere for NASCAR. And just that whole entire operation. I respect the trying it. I think it was a great thing to discover, to try out, but I don't think LA has been very accepting of that particular event. Maybe they would be accepting of another NASCAR event, such as how Chicago's been for the street race. Going into that, Chicago didn't seem like they wanted that at all. Now after a couple of seasons, seems like they really like having NASCAR come to Chicago, which is something that we sort of didn't expect. But the fans love it. The city seems to love it from everything we hear. So certainly that was positive. I get LA Memorial Coliseum, the Clash for the last 3 years, I feel like got a negative slate. And then, just to cap it off, this year we had to move it up a day due to some unprecedented rainfall in LA. So moving it to Bowman Gray, I think's a great idea because this track, I think it's a little bit shorter than the one will be at the LA Coliseum, but it's still about the same size. But the on-track racing product, if I take away, everything else about it, it's a non-points race, just looking at the on-track racing product, the quarter-mile track produces good racing in the next-gen car. You get the bump and run, and you get contact, and you get, a few tempers flaring, more so like we used to see at short tracks in the Generation 6 car. So I like the quarter-mile racetrack, at least for, a one-off non-points event, right? Because obviously you can't fit, 40 cars on it or 36 cars on the racetrack. But for non-points paying event, sure, I love it. Bowman Gray certainly. Back in North Carolina, we now have 4 racetracks in North Carolina now, by the way. You go to North Wilkesboro, Charlotte, obviously the big race, and then now for Rockingham making their return in the Trucks and Xfinity. So certainly that's exciting. Let's talk about another big race, right? The second big race on the schedule. We have to go all the way down to Prime Video's portion of the schedule, and you can see that on the schedule as well. In Mexico City on June 15th, big deal there. Big race, the Xfinity Series race there for a few years, about a decade or so ago. I know Kyle Busch has won a race there. But definitely successful in Mexico City. Obviously, this is a racetrack NASCAR's been to. And this is good, right? This sort of branches out of the United States, right? This isn't a huge step, but this sort of gets the teams prepared. Have to go across borders, has to get the race cars across the border. So certainly this is sort of a jump in the right direction, I think. I think this is exciting, trying to reach new fans. And one way to do that, if you want to go national, right? You want to go worldwide. Well, the first thing you have to do is branch out of the United States, at least, 1 or 2 times a year. So I think that moving this race to Mexico City, it did replace a Richmond race, which I'm okay with. And, I go to Richmond a lot. I'm okay with that. I think this is a good idea. I think this is great to go to another country and experiment, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how this race goes. I'm sure there'll be a lot of Suarez fans in the grandstands. Hopefully the fans come out. I hope the fans in Mexico City decide to show up for this race and treat it with respect, and I hope they enjoy it and welcome it to their city, which is something we'll certainly have to keep an eye on this year. You want that national, that worldwide respect, and and attention, right? So that's certainly a big deal there as well. Once again, returning to the Chicago street race is big. But let's talk a little bit about the playoffs, right? We can look at the playoff schedule here. A few big differences. Darlington once again, starts out the playoff Southern 500. That's nothing new. The only reason it's not this year is because of the Olympic break. But you have Gateway being moved from the midsummer or June now in the playoff, September 7th. So that's exciting. Obviously, Gateway has a mass amount of fans that show up for every race. I think they've sold out every season that we've gone there the last 3 years. So certainly it's exciting. A big crowd, some decent racing. There's been some exciting moments at that racetrack over that 3-year span as well. So I'm excited to see this be put in the playoffs, ramp up the intensification. And I do like that we have, the playoffs this year I feel like it's a little too wacky, right? You want every type of track in the playoffs, but you also don't want just wild cards. So I like this, right? I mean, you have Darlington, probably the hardest track in NASCAR, but it rewards the best drivers. Same thing with Gateway, right? I feel like, you look at our 3 winners there. Big teams, championship contending teams, maybe a little bit less with Austin-centric this year, at least right now. But, championship contending teams, I feel like we always see top teams run up front and finish up front at Gateway or Worldwide Technology Raceway. So excited to see that in the playoffs. Sort of a little bit calmer than, 2 road courses, 2 super speedways. I like putting those ovals in there because that is really what makes up a majority of the NASCAR schedule. You have New Hampshire now opens up the round of 12. I'm excited to see that, right? I'm used to watching New Hampshire in the summer, but I'm excited to see what it can do on September the 21st. And you remember New Hampshire when the knockout round playoffs first started in 2014, New Hampshire was in the playoffs every year for quite some time, right? They had 2 races a year. So to put them back in the playoffs, I think is exciting as well. September 21st should be interesting to see how that works out. You have, once again, Kansas and the Charlotte Roval will make a return. But the big news is going to be here in the round of 8 because you have Las Vegas, Talladega, then Martinsville. And Talladega, sticking that in the round of 8 spot is a really big deal because it is a wild card, right? People consider Talladega a wild card race, a wild card event. So certainly I was a little bit surprised that they wanted to put it in this slot on October 19th. But, I thought about it and I explained the same thing going into this year's schedule, right? NASCAR is putting these super speedway type tracks, Daytona 500, Atlanta, now Talladega, in the playoffs, right? Because you have Daytona and you have Atlanta to start out the regular season. Those are the first 2 races of the season. That's important to get momentum going. Now you have Talladega in the round of 8. This means that you can't take these races unserious. You cannot go into these races saying, hey, we're just going to try to luck into something or we're just going to try to get through this weekend without a wreck. You have to prepare and you have to step your game up as a team. You have to find an advantage. You have to find ways to strategize. They put it in NASCAR's hands and NASCAR puts it in the team's hands to figure out how to get better finishes at these racetracks, and they're putting them in key moments of the schedule, and that means you have to take them serious. You can argue all day whether they're luck or not, but it's the rule. That's how it's set. It's a set schedule, and you have to perform there well if you want to make it to that championship race. So that makes everyone now have to take Talladega more serious. If you're in the playoffs, if you're in the round of 8, you have to go into Talladega finding every advantage and trying to win that race. And usually we do see a playoff driver win at Talladega. So certainly that is interesting moving forward. Obviously, Phoenix will still host the championship for at least one more year. We can take a few, pinpoint a few other small things on the Cup schedule, right? I mean, you have, it looks like Nashville, Michigan's been moved up a little bit, earlier June rather than late August. Probably might have some, weather impacts there. Of course, you see TNT's portion of the schedule. Dover looks like it's been moved back out of May or early June to late July. So certainly that's interesting as well. You have that Brickyard 400 on July 27th. One thing I do like is that every network gets a crown jewel. Fox gets the Daytona 500. Prime Video gets the Coke 600 at Charlotte. TNT Sports will get the Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis. And you have NBC Sports, they get the playoffs, and of course they get that Southern 500 to open up the playoffs as well. So all 4 crown jewels divided along 4 different networks. I like that as well. I think that's great. For NASCAR. Another thing to take note, Homestead Miami's been moved up to March 23rd. The reasoning for this is there's been some talk about they want to get this race out of the way early next year so they can start renovating it for the 2026 championship. So let's keep that in mind. That's not a guarantee. We don't know that for sure, but there's been some rumors of that. we'll have to monitor that moving forward. We can take a quick look here at the Xfinity Series and Truck Series schedule. Certainly exciting. You can see here that the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series will be going back to the Rockingham on Easter weekend, right? I mean, April 19th, the Xfinity Series will be running at Rockingham. I think this is the only off week for the Cup Series, by the way. The off week will be April 20th. That'll be the only Sunday NASCAR does not race for quite some time. So there will be NASCAR on-track action from every week from February 16th to that first weekend in November. So certainly a lot of racing action on that Easter weekend, adding into Rockingham. Once again, that adds 4 tracks now in the top 3 series in North Carolina. And I like that too. But that's it. That's really all there is to talk about following the schedule releases today. I hope you liked the video. Let me know what you think of the schedule down below. I mean, is there anything that stands out to you that I didn't mention? Is there anything that you don't like about the schedule, that you really like about the schedule? Let me know down below, of course. And of course, share the video if you do. I really appreciate it. And of course, let's get rowdy.